To make care home visiting guidance mandatory is being delivered to Downing Street today. Campaigners say many care homes continue to flout government guidelines by imposing restrictions on the number of visits a family member can make to a loved one. They say the government has provided a clear roadmap out of lockdown for everyone in society, apart from for residents in care homes. Well, let's talk now to Jenny Morrison. She's co-founder of the Rights for Residents campaign. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. There have obviously been changes as the situation has evolved, and the rules around visiting in many care homes have been relaxed. But you're concerned it's not an even picture. So tell us a bit more about how you see the situation.
Good morning, Joanna, and thanks for covering this really important issue. Really appreciate that this morning. As you just pointed out, the government have recently produced some guidance that is supposedly instrumental in opening care homes up very carefully and allowing a controlled number of visitors to start, seeing their loved ones inside care homes, and that's been really welcome. But what we're finding is that there are a large number of care homes, and particularly the large care groups who dominate the sector, who refuse point blank to follow some aspects of the government guidance. So what we've got at the moment, Joanna, is a postcode lottery, basically, where people like myself, for example, I am designated as an essential caregiver in line with the government guidance, and I can go into my mum's room and I can spend 3 or 4 afternoons a week with mum for a few hours at a time. And my sister can also go in as a designated visitor, and she can have an hour's visit, also in addition to that, twice a week, which has just been great. I take all of the same infection control precautions as the staff. So I have a PCR test once a week, and I have a rapid test every time I visit the care home, and I go straight into mum's room. And so, I'm not putting anybody else in the care home at risk. So it's a very safe process. But, we're hearing from our members in droves that care homes are imposing blanket visiting policies, sometimes as little as 20 minutes per resident for just one family member once a month, for example. And so, that can't be fair. It's not an equal picture. And we're saying that surely all residents should have the same visiting rights. It shouldn't just depend on the whim of a care home manager or, a large care home group as to whether or not they will allow it. And, currently, as you pointed out in the introduction, the care home visiting guidance is only advisory. And basically, relatives who are being, kept out by these very, very harsh restrictions have absolutely no recourse to challenge these visiting policies. So our campaign and our petition is calling on the government to mandate the care home visiting guidance and ensure there are clear penalties for, those care homes and care groups that refuse to follow it. And also the other thing that we're asking for in our petition, Joanne, is that, in the case of future variants or lockdowns, or, if cases rise, for example, in the autumn, we really want every resident to have the right of one family member, an essential caregiver, that could visit in any situation. Because we've seen throughout the pandemic, 30,000 people have died with COVID in care homes. But, over the pandemic, 130,000 residents have died in care homes, all of them spending their last months, hours, weeks, alone, isolated. And we really want to make sure that that never happens again.
It's heartbreaking what has happened with people in care homes being unable to see their loved ones, for them and for the loved ones. And we'll talk in a moment about that, because obviously you've mentioned your mum, and I know that really formed why you're campaigning now, because of what happened with you at the start of all of this. But just in terms of why some care homes would not be relaxing their guidelines, I wonder why you think it is. I mean, one point that has been made by Nadra Ahmed of the National Care Homes Care Association is that they're having to deal with insurance policies that don't cover them if residents catch COVID. Is that what it boils down to? Concerns around insurance, as far as you understand?
Well, to be honest, relatives are very frustrated by this argument, Joanna, because what we're seeing at the moment is, even in some very small care homes with limited resources, they are managing to allow safe visits in line with the guidance and as instructed by the government. And, it seems to be the larger care groups who have huge resources. And let's face it, they make huge profits as well. And they seem to be, the ones that are shouting loudest that they haven't got the resources, or, they're not insured to do this. So my question to them is, how come some care homes and many care homes can facilitate these visits and are not complaining about insurance problems, and then others are? And another point, to be perfectly honest, residents are at a loss really as to how somebody could be sued if COVID entered a care home and they were following all of the infection control procedures as outlined in the government's own guidance. I mean, would the government really put out guidance that they felt wasn't safe for care home residents? So I find these claims and excuses quite staggering, to be honest, because the government have been very, very slow to open up care homes, and they've been very, very cautious. And so, they obviously are informed by the scientific evidence that, it is safe to open care homes, provided, it's managed in an acceptable way. So I feel like, these claims are becoming quite sinister from those care homes that simply will not abide by the government guidelines. I heard from, for example, one of our members at the weekend, who, he hasn't seen his mother for 14 months. She's literally wasting away. She's now 4.5 stone. That's how much weight she's lost, because she is distraught at being kept away from her family. And he's now being allowed just a 20-minute visit once a month, and that's it. That's the only visit that she gets. And that's to someone who's suffering from dementia, who has no conception, of what's going on. And I say to those companies, please, do the right thing. Think about the health and well-being, the mental health and well-being of your residents, and please do as the government has instructed you to do, which currently they're not doing. I mean, we feel, Joanna, the government have said to us that they'd rather try to encourage care homes to open up. But, they were told to open up on the 2nd of December to some extent. And here we are now in, May, and still some of them are overly restricting visits, totally contrary to the government's advice.
Jenny, you mentioned obviously the impact on the mental health of the residents. It must be taking a huge toll as well, obviously, on people like you, on the loved ones on the outside. I mentioned your mum, Jean. I think we've actually got a picture of her that we can look at while you tell us a bit about her. We haven't, unfortunately. I thought we did. Sorry about that. But do tell us a bit about your mum, how it was and how she is now.
Okay, yeah. I mean, prior to the pandemic, my mum had been living in her care home for, 3 years, and she was really happy, and she was really settled, and the carers were wonderful. So there were no issues. And between myself, my partner, and my sisters, we used to go into the care home 5-6 days a week and spend full days with mum. So our care continued, even after she went into the care home. So her life was very full, and family contact was still very much there, and family support. And then in the first lockdown, obviously, care homes had to lock down because it was a new thing and people didn't know how to deal with it, and we didn't have tests, you know, we didn't have PPE, we didn't have all of the infection control procedures that we've got now. And so we were kind of relieved that the care home locked down in the first instance. But the change in mum, you know, in those first 3 months, without that family support and that essential care that family, you know, give to a loved one who's got dementia, for example, or, you know, a young person that's got a learning difficulty. Wow, the deterioration was just rapid and really staggering. She literally stopped eating properly, stopped drinking, stopped feeding herself. She lost the power of speech. It was just absolutely horrendous, Joanna. It was just a terrible experience. And we were left feeling, you know, because we didn't see her again till November properly, you know, in the care home. And we just felt like we were grieving for somebody that was still alive, and we worried and were anxious the whole time. And, you know, our own mental health just suffered so much, as well as mums, you know, so it's the whole family that suffers. And what we're saying to the government is, and they have acknowledged this in the guidance, is that, you know, the care that's given by a loved one, you know, essential mental health and well-being support simply cannot just be removed. You know, you wouldn't remove the care that's given by a paid carer. And the care that we give, one family member, not everybody going into a care home if cases rise, but one family member, you know, to keep that essential well-being support going and to make sure those residents feel safe, it would definitely, you know, save the lives of so many, because there are many excess deaths which people have put down to, you know, people dying of loneliness and isolation, because, you know, people need a reason to live. They need something to carry on for. And our care, we're not just visitors, Joanna. You know, a visitor is somebody that pops into a care home maybe once every couple of months. You know, they might see an aunt, or they might see someone that they don't see very often, and that's a visit. We're talking about people, a family member that gives absolutely vital emotional and mental health support to someone. And we want the government to adopt the emergency legislation that's been put forward by the Joint Parliamentary Committee on Human Rights to enshrine one family member, an essential visitor, who can offer that care even in the midst of a pandemic, provided they follow all the infection control procedures in exactly the same way as the paid carers do.
Jenny, it's really been a privilege to talk to you. I'm sorry you've been on such a very difficult journey. Just wishing you the best, and your mum Jean. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Joanne.
Now it is